I'm not saying Hollywood is stupid. I'm just saying they're not as smart as they think they are. Hi everybody, welcome back to A Well-Read Nerd. I'm Amber, and as you can tell by the title of this video, I'm doing something different today. Specifically, I'm talking about an issue I've had for a while, a personal issue, not a great one, but one that I've had, which is the fact that I love books. I also happen to love movies. I would like to sometimes see these turned into a visual media where it's a lot easier for me to digest it in a short period of time. Reading takes a lot of time. Not all of us have time to sit down and read every book we want to, and it would be great if they could somehow compact that into, 2 to 6 hours worth of viewing as opposed to the days or weeks it might take us to actually read the book. Now, there are two different things, and there's two different camps about which one's better. In my personal opinion, it really just depends on which one it is. Some things the book is better. Some things the movie's better. That's just how it goes. And that goes for everything. Like, I love the Umbrella Academy, the TV show. I didn't like the graphic novel. I think that the form in which the media is presented sometimes allows for a more cohesive vision of that media. But, before I get into a long rambling thing here, Hollywood has a really, really bad habit of taking something that's popular and turning it into another media that then fails horribly. If you don't know what I'm talking about, think of the Hobbit movies. I love The Hobbit. I read it a million times when I was growing up. There's not enough money or booze in the world that will make me sit through those movies again. There's not. I got student loan debt and I still wouldn't consider it. And maybe one day if I have enough money to buy enough booze, I will talk about that. That's not today. Today we're talking in generalities before I get into a specific example. But just keep that in mind. Like, a lot of times when these things are moved from their original media format into a new media format, it fails miserably. If, as you guys are watching this, you could probably think of 2 or 3 that you've seen that you thought you were going to really like because you liked the original material that it was based off of, and then you get into it and you're like, no, I don't like this at all. That's just how it is. And today I kind of wanted to talk about this in general, but also like why Hollywood does that. And I'm going to be talking about it through a very specific lens. And that very specific lens is this book. Now, for anybody who was a child in the early 90s and is not familiar with this book, this is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It was a big old thing back about 09-ish. I was in college. Yeah, 09 I want to say is when it came out. I'm sure it's in my notes somewhere, but I'm not going to look down right now. But this sort of was a cultural thing for a moment in, like, certain circles. Like, the very niche group of people, plus the millions of others that were just curious, that love zombies and love Jane Austen. So this was sort of a moment in time. We're going to go into some specifics about the book in a minute, but the important thing is that Hollywood took this book and turned it into a movie. And we are going to talk about how that failed spectacularly. But first, let's get into what the book's about. So just as a little bit of a background for this book, it was originally thought up by an editor for, I think the name of the publishing house was Quirk Books or Quick Books. No, Quick Books does taxes. I think it's Quirk Books, by the name of Jason, let's go for Kulik. He was an editor at the time for the publishing house and had decided to drum up sales, come up with a new book idea. Well, how he came up with this book idea is, in all honesty, pretty genius for the time when social media and everything else was still in its infancy. Was he basically just looked at a list of popular things that were like fanboys. So it had things like zombies, aliens, ninjas, all of that stuff on it. And then he compared it to a list of public domain properties. That's properties that are currently not owned by anybody and nobody holds the copyright to them, so you can basically do whatever you want with them. Well, through going through all of this, he came across the idea of Pride and Prejudice and zombies as something that just stuck in his head. Not being a writer, he instead went to his friend, Seth Grahame-Smith, who was a writer, is a writer. I think he's still alive. Who knows in the age of COVID. And was basically like, hey, I have this idea. Why to turn it into a book? And Grahame-Smith was basically like, this sounds amazing. So yes. And thus began a sort of process of basically taking the original manuscript from Pride and Prejudice, adding in zombies, and then tweaking the manuscript to fit with the new added elements, which sounds easy, but anybody who's ever written or read fan fiction will tell you it is incredibly hard to do, especially to match tone. Now, Grahame-Smith does a really, really good job of matching Jane Austen's tone. It's not exact. You can pick out parts that are definitely his original works, but it blends together enough that it's a cohesive format. There's a prequel to this that Grahame-Smith didn't write, and I'm just going to tell you now, ignore that, because the writer can barely hold together a plot, let alone, work in those Austenian tendencies that she had with her writing and make it believable. It comes across like the worst kind of fan fiction ever. And that's the one that doesn't even seem like it's trying. But yeah, so this one, very simple with how it was formatted. Like I said, they took the original manuscript, because it was public domain, and basically added stuff in. Now, because of that, it follows basically the same exact plot of Pride and Prejudice, which is where part of the humor in the book comes from, because you see all of these people that are worried about husbands and dowries and stuff, and at the same time you're like, yeah, but there's friggin' zombies over here, people. Priorities. And it does add for some interesting character developments, the Bennet sisters being zombie hunters, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, wearing a kimono, being followed around by ninjas as she hunts zombies with a katana. Like, it goes off the rails, but in the fun kind of way. But like I said, the plot is the same. Like, you got the Bennet girls, their mom wants them to get married, their dad's kind of like, man, why did I marry this bitch? And, you've got Netherfield, you've got the Balls, you've got Wickham, you've got Lydia's, abscondment. Is that the right word? Running away. Let's go with that. That one's less fancy, but I'm pretty sure you know what I mean, and I'm saying it correctly. You have all of that. You have, Elizabeth and Darcy falling in love. And at the same time, like I said, you have zombies. You have the girls fighting, being trained in, Near Eastern martial arts and things like that, carrying around weapons. There's an entire fight scene with Elizabeth and Lady Catherine, and that is the climax in the original one, but here it's an actual fight with swords. And the fact that they still managed to keep that rapport in the original while they're basically kicking the crap out of each other, it's nice, it's funny, it's dark, macabre humor with a levity to it of I'm not taking this too seriously. So all of that being said, I could see why this book sold literally millions of copies. I'm also sorry for spoiling it for most of you who haven't read it yet, but trust me, I left lots of stuff out. Go read it, and I'll warn you later on in the video when I just get into straight up spoiler talk if you do feel like reading it. That being said, that's basically the book in a nutshell. Sold millions of copies. Worldwide phenomenon. Everybody loved it. I think I read it 3 times that year. Just because I was at college and I needed some way besides alcohol to relieve my anxiety. Because I think that was the year I had abnormal psych. So yeah, you could definitely see why it was this kismet moment in time where this book just happened to exist. And now we have to talk about the movie. Alright, so Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, the movie. The concept of this movie was originally, thought up when the book was first being released. So the book got pushed to an earlier release because there was so much buzz online, and that was an accomplishment in '09 in and of itself. Back when people still had MySpaces, this thing was blowing up, and there was a lot of interest in it. So a lot of production companies put out feelers to get the rights for it. Happens all the time. There's a number of books that I've covered in my books coming out this year, lists, you can check about up here, that have already been optioned for movies. Nothing's come of it. They haven't been published yet, but they have been optioned. I've got a few books sitting on my shelf right now that have been optioned for movies. It happens pretty quickly, especially if you have the numbers behind it. And so this isn't really a shock that they jumped on it as soon as it came out. But there were a lot of hiccups. Let's go with hiccups. First of all, there was budgetary issues. Period dramas tend to take up a lot of money. Horror movies, not so much. You can typically make a zombie movie for $5 million easy, including marketing. But a period piece typically runs in the 20 to 30 mil range, sometimes more depending on what it is. So that's a lot more of an investment. So the thing that they were actually investing in was the period portions of the plot and not necessarily the zombies. You can buy a lot of buckets of corn syrup for about $100K. And you can make zombie makeup out of tissue paper. But yeah, so they jumped on it right out the gate. They were like, okay, we're going to make this. They got a team together. They wrote up a treatment for it. They got Natalie Portman interested in playing Elizabeth Bennet. It seemed like it was going to be this big thing. I think the original release date for it was 2011 when the development was going on. So just a couple years after the book came out, the hype's still high. People are still talking about it. And then nothing happened. At all. Until about 2014. So, like I said, the book came out in '09. The movie didn't actually start filming till 2014. And as you can tell with something that's sort of one of these moments in pop culture, interest had waned significantly since this book was first published. There wasn't any talk about it. There wasn't much fanfare when it was announced that they were filming or who was being cast in it or anything like that. It was just sort of they'd already sunk the money, so they were going to make this. And because of that, they didn't release this until 2016. A whole 7 years after the book came out. Now, normally that wouldn't be an issue with a book. However, like I have said repeatedly through this video, and I will probably say again, this is very niche. This is a specific type of book. It was a sensation for a while, but it's not going to hold a lot of interest for people long term. It's sort of a one and done book. You read it once, you either like it or you don't like it, and you move on. Or you're like me and you read it several times. But I'm weird. So there's that. But yeah, this is one of those strike while the iron is hot kind of deals, and they just failed that miserably. They somehow managed to get Charles Dance and Lena Headey in this. Was this pre-Game of Thrones? Let's see, 2006 or 2015 when they started filming. What year did Game of Thrones come out? That was 2015, wasn't it? Yeah, let's just say the Game of Thrones was already out. I can't not remember what year it came out off the top of my head. But they were well-known actors regardless of that. And now, due to that juggernaut, they were practically household names. So again, they got those big names, but then they also failed miserably with the rest of the casting. Lily James was not popular then. Most of the other actors I didn't recognize from anything. I think one of them was on Gossip Girl. One that played Mr. Bingley, maybe. He looks pretty enough for Gossip Girl. But I don't know for sure. But the rest of them, largely forgettable, interchangeable young actors. Most of them haven't done an overabundance since then, with the exception of Lily James. But you can even tell in this movie that she just has that little bit of raw talent that can be refined later over the course of a career so that she has staying power. The rest of the younger actors aren't that lucky. They got together this cast, they sunk money into it, 28 mil in all, which, fun fact, is exactly how much they spend on the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice in 02 or 04, something like that. So they spent the same amount of money as that, with a much more ambitious plot. Now, as I say ambitious, not good. It was just ambitious. They sunk the money, they sunk the time, they had a big marketing campaign for this. There's dozens of trailers that you can find on YouTube. Go ahead and check them out. They're for various markets, and that's something we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, they sunk a crap ton of money into this. And then it failed spectacularly. Specifically, it made back $16.4 million of its $28 million budget. Comparing that to the Pride and Prejudice from 2005, I looked at my notes now, so I was sort of in the ballpark. Same budget. It, in fact, grossed $121.6 million. So yeah, this movie was a spectacular bomb. Now, let's get into why. Alright, so like I said, the actors were subpar, young, unrefined. The director hadn't done anything before, hadn't done anything since, but lightning strikes in a bottle occasionally, so that wasn't a complete risk by the studio. Had a decent budget, reasonable runtime for a horror movie at 108 minutes in total, so decent for a horror movie. Not for a period piece, but you take it and leave it. But yeah, this movie failed. And you might be thinking, especially if you don't remember the hype around this book and everything else, how can something that had so much going for it, had people that were interested in it, it had, something that was a once in a lifetime thing, how could something else based off of it fail? Well, with that, we get into a larger problem with Hollywood. And that larger problem is the fact that Hollywood doesn't know how to make book adaptations. They don't. They barely know how to make decent movies. They make blockbusters. But, in my opinion, a blockbuster is not necessarily a decent movie. Just because it's shiny doesn't mean it's good. Hollywood's big problem is the fact that they want to Hollywoodify everything. Now, what I mean by that, especially in the case of this book, like I told you, the plot of the book follows the same plot as Pride and Prejudice. It's the same thing. There's some new elements added to it. That's it. It's a period piece with zombies in it. Hence the appeal and the name. However, Hollywood saw that and went, you know what this needs to be? It's not a comedy, a dark comedy with like Regency and horror elements in it. No, it's an action movie. And so they basically took the entire plot and scrapped it. Every single thing. There are nuances of the plot. There's still the, Meryton ball at the beginning. There's still Netherfield. There's still Lydia running away. There's still a kind of altercation between Elizabeth and Catherine. There's still Darcy breaking up Jane and Bingley. There's still Mrs. Bennet being the worst mom ever and not realizing it. But those alone aren't the entire plot by far, and they also aren't enough to make this seem like a Pride and Prejudice book or movie. Ugh. Where to even go? Where? Alright, let's start with what they changed. I'll borrow one from, what's his face? Dominic Noble, that's it. If you haven't seen his channel, it's great. Like, I love his videos. They're all about, like, how movies screw up. So kind of what I'm doing, only much more cohesive and better done. But you're here for my personality. Anyway, let's talk about what they changed while they were going through this. First major thing that they changed is the fact that they decided that this movie needed a big opening action scene about the original occupants of Netherfield, who in this universe were killed by zombies. Why? There was no reason for it. It sufficed in the book with one line, the same way it did in, you know, the original, of basically Miss Bennet being like, yay, new people, with the added thing of, yay, new people after the old people were killed by zombies. And I especially don't like this opening scene because it shoehorns Darcy in there, who's now a colonel. I don't remember him being a colonel in the book. I reread the book, but I don't remember that being in there. Maybe it was, and I just, like, blocked it out. But whatever. Like, it doesn't serve a purpose. There's no narrative purpose for it. It doesn't even act as a good first act setup for the rest of the plot. Like I said, you could just go into Mr. and Mrs. Bennet talking. It worked in the original book. It's worked in all of the adaptations since then. But no, they thought action scene. Okay, well, fine, whatever. I mostly, when I watched this, zoned out through most of it because it's a lot of exposition for no reason. You don't need to explain zombies to me. I'm an American. Like, half of our movies are zombie movies. So yeah, the explaining zombies and all of that and all of this stuff, like, boring. Cut it out. Not needed. I will say the opening titles with the explanation of where the plague came from in the vaguest ways possible. Interesting. Good stylistic choice with doing, like, the little cutouts and things. Doesn't make up for the rest of it. And, but good on them for that one. It was at least, if they just got into that straight from, like, the studio logo, it would have been way better. So if they ever do a re-release, they should just cut that first part out. But after that, you are once again introduced to the Bennets, the plot, the zombies. That stays mostly the same during the first part of the book. About where it starts to derail completely is when Mr. Collins comes in. First of all, Matt Smith didn't look like he knew what kind of movie he was acting in, whether it was a comedy or a horror or a period piece. And I have a feeling that that was down to poor direction. Not all actors can fake it till they make it. Sometimes they need to know what the hell's going on around them. And I think in this case, he needed to know what the hell was going on, and nobody was giving him any direction for tone or anything for scenes. So it's a hot mess and a half. But that's the main part where, like, the book and the movie completely diverge from each other. Like, to the point where they're no longer the same beast. And I mean, specifically in the fact that the book follows the plot of Charlotte Lucas marrying Mr. Collins. This is your spoiler alert from this point onward. I'm going to be talking about the book and the movie and how it ends. And if you don't want to know, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment, do all that kind of stuff. And I'll talk to you later. Bye. For those of you that want to stick around, because this is a 6-year-old movie and a 13-year-old book, so you don't really care about getting spoilers, pull up a chair, we'll finish this out. So at this point in the book, Charlotte Lucas marries Mr. Collins. However, she has been bit by a zombie. I don't know why I did that. That's vampires, but whatever. She's been bit by a zombie, so she's slowly turning into a zombie. And I always thought that this was a kind of funny, like, little thing that Grahame-Smith put in there, because, like, she marries Mr. Collins to hide the fact that she's becoming a zombie. And there's always been, like, this interpretation, or maybe it's just my liberal arts self, and my love of reading homoeroticism and everything. But there is one interpretation that Charlotte Lucas married Mr. Collins because she had a thing for Lizzie, and that wasn't going anywhere. So she just married the first available guy. So marrying him to hide up the thing that she's trying to hide from everybody else, her dark secret, kind of funny if you read it that way. I don't know if that was intentional. If it was, kudos to him, because that's, you know, funny. But yeah, none of this, frankly, interesting plot was included in the movie. None of it. And in fact, they just give it like a little one-off thing about how, like, Charlotte might marry Mr. Collins, but they're not married when they go to Rosings, and Elizabeth accompanies them, and then I guess they don't get married because, like, some parts of this movie are so boring. I might have blacked it out, but I don't actually remember what happened to Charlotte. She's gone. That's fine. Mr. Collins shows up at the end to be an officiator. But yeah, from there, the plot of the book progresses the same way it does in the original. Elizabeth goes on a tour with her aunt and uncle. They end up near Pemberley. Lydia's run off with Wickham. They go to try to find him. His dumbass has ended up basically a paraplegic. But they got married anyways, and now that's all settled the same way it was in the original novel, with them going off, and I guess Lydia spending the rest of her life caring for her now invalid, bedridden husband. How that happened aren't really important. It's really not. It's just the fact that that's how his character ends up. After that, in the book, you have the confrontation with Lady Catherine, which is a frankly wonderful scene of Lady Catherine showing up in a kimono with a katana and ninjas, and her and Lizzie just beating the shit out of each other, till Elizabeth finally has the upper hand and just has her pinned with a sword against her throat, and lets her live. All of this back end is not in the movie. Not really. Lydia is kidnapped by Wickham. She doesn't run away with him. Wickham is apparently a zombie who has been feeding pig's brains to other zombies to make them more human, and to basically control them, because he wants to control all of England and be the super zombie in charge of everything. That fails. They kill him. They make it back to, you know, the last human stronghold as the zombies from England are closing in on them. Or London. That's where that ends. They have Elizabeth and Darcy have a big romantic scene. And then the next one is the confrontation with Lady Catherine de Bow. Which is disappointing. One, there's no ninjas. That makes me unhappy. I like ninjas. Also, the fact that Lena Headey doesn't actually fight Lily James's character. There's like a proxy who's this big, tall, bald guy, and I don't understand why. Like, they make an offhanded comment about how, like, Lady Catherine is like some higher up thing, and like how raising a sword against her would be like raising a sword against England. But that's never brought up in the books. It's never mentioned. It's barely mentioned in the movies. And I don't know if it's just that Lena Headey didn't want to do a stunt scene. Which I don't know why. Like, I haven't seen anything where she said anything about it. Then again, she probably doesn't like mentioning this movie, so that's not surprising. But yeah, there's just no real information as to why they did it this way. And then they end it with like this weird respect thing between her and Elizabeth, which is kind of in the books, but not explicitly stated. And I think it has more to do with the fact that she almost killed her than anything else. So it just leaves what was in the climax of the book to be very lackluster in the movie. Now after that, there's big reunion scene, marriages, kissing, heteronormative stuff, you know, that kind of thing. So it wraps up about the same. Now that you see what the book was and what the movie was, why the hell did Hollywood make this kind of decision? Why? That's my honest question. Like, I've been thinking about it the entire time I've been preparing this video. I've got notes in front of me that are just basically question marks. I just have a thing that says, what the hell happened on my notes. And the answer is no idea. Nobody knows. The writers for the script are like, I mean, they haven't really done an overabundance. It's kind of like the director. You kind of think that they just shoved them in there. I'm halfway considering that this is, what's it called? An ashtray or a trash can movie. Basically, it's a movie that only got made so that they can maintain the rights to something. I fully believe that that's the case. After it already came out, that's what they decided to do, and they realized it wasn't going to sell. Prior to that, I think they went, you know what people like? Zombie action movies. Why in the frick-frack they thought that this book would translate well to an action movie is beyond me. Like, beyond. I don't have, like, some weird, like, nepotism and cocaine-filled brain, like a Hollywood producer, to understand where you get from point A to point Alpha Centauri. Okay? But somehow, some genius somewhere along the line thought that this would sell well. And I don't understand who that person was, besides the fact that they were an idiot. Because you could even tell in the trailers and the marketing material, this movie was marketed completely differently in Europe than it was in the United States. In the United States, all of the trailers are these big action set pieces and, you know, all of that stuff. In Europe, it is marketed very much like what it is, which is a satirical parody. Like, to the point where the trailer looks just like another Jane Austen, thing. You know, another version of Pride and Prejudice coming out. It's been a few years. Why not? Until the zombies show up. And that's the whole point. But the American trailer, and I'm guessing the American film studio that greenlit this crap and funded it, went, that's not good enough. Nobody will really get it. So we need to make it an action movie. Keep in mind, once again, this sold millions of copies. Millions. That have been weird things. Oh yeah, it's a New York Times bestseller, which I know is not that big of an accomplishment, but it's still something. Like, this still sold a lot of copies. And the fact that they basically went, the plot's not good enough, we have to redo it. Are you freaking kidding me? You don't take something that works and then change it to something that sucks. That's called being stupid. You do what everybody's always done, and they do the easy thing and just copy and paste because it's lazy and it makes you money. This is one of those things that is like the crystallization of what is wrong with Hollywood. And by that, I mean that they can't just take a book and just turn it into a movie version of it. No, it has to be something new. And I don't understand that mentality. I really don't. Like, I don't get it. If you could improve upon something, by all means. Some things don't translate from well from one media to the other. That's what I talked about in the beginning of this video. However, if you have something that works and it can translate, Why change it? Why? Honest question, why? That's my big long rambly thing. This is my Valentine's video, if you couldn't tell. Because Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is my go-to romance. Actually, it's not. Never mind. Anyway. What are your thoughts about Hollywood's very poor handling of book adaptations? Do you have strong opinions like I do? Have you ever heard of the book? Do you want to read it now that you heard me blather on about it for who knows how long this will be after I edit it down? Got any questions? Just comment below, like, you know the drill. I'm sad now. Anyway, talking about crappy book movie adaptations of books makes me sad. It's fine. But if you like this video and you want to stick around for some more, I have a playlist, and then I have another playlist. One's unboxing, one's vlog, what I call vlogs, I don't know, video essays. Let's go with that. If you'd like, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications when I post, because I can't keep on a schedule, so it's the only way you'll know. What else is there? I guess you could like the video. I don't know. Likes don't matter anymore. They took away the dislike button, so it's not like it actually matters, but it makes me feel better. So I mean, if you want to brighten my day, you could do that. But yeah. Stick around. I've got some other stuff coming out this month. More video essays like this that I'm working on. Also some unboxings, specifically for Unplugged Box, because they've got a specialty box that's supposed to be shipping this month, and I'm going to share it with you guys. I'm working on other things for the future, whether or not they pan out. Just got to see how it goes. You guys don't even see all the videos that I record. You only see a small fraction, because sometimes I don't like them. Anyway, that's gonna be it for today. Yeah, like I said, come check us out, come check me out, and see what else I'm doing, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye. I think I should put I think I should put whiskey in this instead. It almost makes talking about this movie bearable. Bye.